In this tutorial, I want to extend my Realm app that I wrote for SwiftUI to use the Realm sync. If you're interested in sharing data between different devices, not just persisting it locally, then this might be interesting for you because Realm offers quite a lot of functionality, probably too much in order for me to explain everything. But what I'm going to do is, this is the state from the last tutorial. So I have a very simple list of items. Each of these items just stores a string, the name, and if it's a favorite or not. And here, this is not running locally. I'm actually logged in. So if I log out, you see here this sign in page. So I have 3 different ways of accessing the database. One of them is anonymously. If you log in and log out again, then your data is lost. So that's not really ideal. You can create a new account with sign up, or you can log into an already existing one. I'm just going to press here on log in anonymously. And now you see it starts fresh again because I logged in anonymously, and then I can just create new items. Okay, if I create now an account, if I log into an already existing account, you see I have items, and now I'm opening the same app a second time. Okay, now I'm going to log in with the same account on the second device with my password, which actually is the email and my super secure password. So now I have 2 times the same data. If I add one of these elements, this device's Realm sends the updates also to the cloud or the Realm server, which then sends it further to all of the clients that request this data. So the other app does get it too. For example, if I make one of these items here a favorite, you see this is also updating in the list with a heart. In order to make this work or extend from our current state of just running it locally to here, we don't have to do a lot in the views and the SwiftUI views because it's set up in a nice way. Well, we need to tweak a little bit the access point to use the right Realm. But the main part will be how to set up the Realm app on the server, how to create the account and the database and the settings and the authentication, so we can actually log in here. I'm now at the official website of Realm on realm.io. Realm was acquired by mongoldb, which means that it's now hosted on Atlas. So if you look here at getting started, you will get all the information of how to create your MongoDB Realm. And I have to create now an account, so I press here and sign in. I will use the create an account. Now I can use this account to sign in and do some verification that I'm a human. Okay, now I am in the main part. So it automatically actually, okay, this is my organization identifier. It already created a project for me. And I am now in the database. And I can create a database. I'm going to go for, because this is for a tutorial. And I don't want to put any payment information, so I go for the free one. AWS, doesn't really matter. Okay, then create. The cluster name is just a default. This is the quick start. And it's currently creating my cluster. This is only the first time you're actually accessing this. So I click here on project 0. So this is empty, there's no users, there's no data. We can go here later to browse collection and then get our data. You can also load sample data if you want to. Okay, this is we're going to do in a minute. I'm right now in this project. So each project can have different collections or databases that you can access here under database browse collections. So this is just the pure database. What we need to add on top of the database that is in Atlas is our Realm client or Realm app. So I go here under the Realm tab. I need to change my project ownership. Okay, we continue with the security quick start. So I'm using here a username password. I'm using my local environment. Add my current AP address. Okay, if you go to database access, then here, this is the database access, but I want to go to the project access. So you need to create here a person, and this needs to be here project owner. You can also invite other people. And here's where you create the API key. Need to update this at list entry. Current IP address. Done. Okay, after multiple updates, I finally found, it seems to be a bug with Chrome, I don't know. What you have to have set is, if you are the access manager, the project access, you have to have here your own account with the project role as project owner. Because then when you go to the realm tab, there's no errors, and you have the possibility to choose a template. This is very convenient, and I prefer this because I tried. The first one is to build everything from scratch, but the one that gives you a quick start with Swift has some presettings. It's really difficult to navigate through this kind of. So we are choosing the Swift starter, cluster 0, this is the default one, application 0, this is the one I have, and then here the deployment mode. And now I can create my Realm application. I can go through this. I'm not going to use the Realm client app in this tutorial. So my deployment was successful, which means that whatever changes I made in the UI here are actually used for the server. The other thing that you see is its deployment mode is on. This is very useful because then we don't need to do so many settings ourselves. So it suggests us a couple of guides. One important thing is here the application ID. So I copy this. So we need to have this app ID in the app, but before we can actually make use of this, I need to make sure I have certain settings. For example, in the Authentication tab, you can choose what kind of authentication methods you want to have. But because I choose one of the templates, it already enabled the anonymous one and the email password. If you click here on edit, so first of all it's enabled. Then this is because we are just in development stage. We automatically confirm that users have a new account. You can also send an email, and only when they open the email and click on confirm, only then the account is created. The second thing is that it's asking here is a password reset function, and it's using this function. And on the left side in the dashboard, you have a lot more functionality, and one of them is here under build functions. And this function is already created. It's basically not working. It would return the failed status, which is definitely not for production, but right now I'm just happy it does something. It's just for testing purposes. You only should do this for testing. So we have these two authentication methods. Then under sync, when I open, you see our development mode is on. And we have here set how we want to have our sync. So it's partition based, which means that you can decide what kind of, you have a partition key. Here we see that we are in development mode, which helps us create our schemas on the server. This is the cluster. This is the database name that I just choose. This is the partition key. And here are different permissions defined. And if you look here, users can only read all data. That's a bit confusing. Users can read all data. It means they can only read data. So in case they're checking, if it's read, it's always returning true, and for write, it's always false. But in our case, because it's more like a to-do app, we want to make sure that the user can only read and edit his or her own data, which means I want to have users can only read or write their own data. You can also choose users can read all data but only write their own data. So if I choose the one that of their own data, you see that in this case there is a condition saying that this partition key, that we don't actually have to manage anything for this. If the user ID is equivalent to the partition key, then he can read it, and the same for write. Okay, I did not change anything here. Then under schema, it created one object. So this is the database that it created. I don't know if I put it somewhere. Probably I did. And this one task. But we are going to add our own soon enough. If I go back to Atlas to check the database, there's still no data in there. Yeah, we don't have any data yet. So this is we will have something very soon. Okay, now I should have set up everything. And we have this one application. You might have multiple applications in multiple of these databases, simply because you have a development application, one in staging and one in production for the end users, and you don't want to test changing the data models with the production database. So you need to separate this in different ones. So you can have here different applications depending on which environment you want to have, development or production, and also different databases. But this is even more advanced. Okay, now I want to continue. We actually didn't do that much in the backend with the app. So I need to definitely work on the login and also to the app. So these views were all, these are all views that concern my items. So I'm going to move them into a group because I'm going to create a lot of files. Item views. So moving this there. And then I am creating a new group for login. I'm starting with a login view, or signing or login sign up view, login view. And I also need to place the code for actually logging in somewhere, and I'm creating a view model for this, or an extra file. New file. This is just a Swift file. This is an authentication manager. I need realm Swift. This is a class authentication manager. Because we're in SwiftUI, I'm making this observable object. Now we have more because of realm. Okay, just because we need to have log in, for logging in, we definitely need to have an email. This is string, this is empty, and published var password. This is string, and then maybe we want to only allow signing in or logging in. Auth is enabled. This is a bool. If we actually have something, so if the emails count is larger than 5 and the passwords count is also larger than 5. Okay, now I'm going to write the functions for logging in anonymously and with email and password. So starting off with the function to anonymously login. I need to access actually my app or my server app. And this is app with the ID, and this is the ID that is on the backend. So if you go to your application and you go here, for example, copy app ID, or it's this app ID. This is the one you need to make sure that Realm knows which backend to connect to, which Realm app to connect to. And we should only actually create this once. So, in examples, they put it in the very top level in the Realm, in the SwiftUI app. So Realm, Swift. And it complains, this is now SwiftUI's app. So we create this one app one time in our application, and now I can reference it here. So we can start with app.login with credentials, and you have the possibility to use credentials for anonymously. This actually has a completion handler. It has one for combine, one with a completion handler, and one with async. They really overdid it. I'm taking just with the completion handler. So this is a result. Switch results. Case success, and you get the user here. Case failure, you get the error here. So in case we have an error, maybe we want to show to the user that we have an error. So I can create here another property just for displaying published. Var is loading. This is typical when we do this false. This is just for logging in, so I know how long the logging in takes. Published var error message. This is an optional string because I hopefully don't have this too often. So I can say here self.error message is equal to login failed. At least I have a message. And when I have a user, I'm just going to print this. Success anonymously logged in. This completion handler returns the value on a background thread, so we need to go back to the main thread, and I have to go here dispatch queue .main.async. So I do these updates on these properties which are used in the UI on the main thread. Okay, I did actually not use here these properties. Then the next thing we need to do is sign up, and client. I need to start by using the app's authentication, email password authentication handler. Register user, and I am again using the email password completion. You can use combine or async too. I know I'm supposed to use combine, but I think it's more useful just going for the easiest one. So now you have the error, which is optional. So if let error is error, if I have an error, I'm going to set my error message to sign up error. And maybe show here the localized description. Usually you should probably convert this to user-friendly things. Else, when I register the user successfully, when I don't have an error, it was successfully, and then I can log in. So func log in. So in this else case, when I don't have an error, I'm calling login. And I have to use, I'm using here self. And I'm using everywhere weak self, not to create reference cycles. And I need to do dispatch queue.main. It's the same for all of them. Adding some question marks. So now in my login, I can use the same email password for login. Okay, so I need to create credentials. Similar to here, app login with credentials. I'm using simply different credentials. Let credentials is credentials dot email password. And then I'm calling app the small one, dot login with credentials. Oh, really need to pay attention which one I use. With the completion handler. And then result, switch results, case failure let error. That's self dot error message. Login failed. And then case dot success let user. Login success. And obviously, because of this, it's again returning on the background thread. So I need to add here dispatch queue and main. And the weak self. Maybe I should not rush too much here. Did I do that everywhere? So I didn't consider actually my loading state and my error messages. So when I tap on anonymously logging in, I'm going to say my is loading is true, and my error message, I'm going to reset it to nil. So when I'm here returning this, in both cases, I am going to say my is loading is false. Because no matter if I'm logging in successfully or not, I definitely finished the loading. When I sign up, I do the same with the starting, so loading. When I return here, I'm only stopping the loading when I'm in the false case, in the error state, because in the other case, I'm continuing with the login. So the login, I can start the login from after the sign up, but I can directly log in. So I also need to, I can just reset this to is loading. Then in both cases, is the loading is false. And then, just to make it with everything, also the function for logging out. This is app dot, and the app not only does the login, it also has, you can also check all users or the current user. And for this user, has also a function which is logout with a completion handler. Obviously, I take this one. So if I have an error, this is an error logging out. So I did not finish logging out. Just going to use the print statement. Maybe I should not make this too complicated. Okay, I have now all the data and we can start building the login screen, the login view. I'm going to start with the authentication manager, and I need to use state object var of manager is of authentication manager. So I'm going to create 2 text fields and 3 buttons. So now I have these 2 text fields for email and password. I'm just going to add a padding and a title. Dot font dot title. I'm using here the loading state, but only I'm showing here the progress view, but only if I'm the loading state, and I'm showing the arrow text if I have one. And just to make this a little bit more clear that it's an arrow state, I'm going to make this pink. Then I need my 2 sign up and login buttons. The login button calls the auth manager's login function, and the sign up button calls the auth manager's sign up function. I'm using here one of the newer SwiftUI features with the button styles bordered prominent. Maybe I should reverse them and have the sign up first. Then I want to have the anonymously. And maybe I wanted to disable these buttons actually. I need to go back what I actually did. So I said off is enabled for this, but it's actually enable buttons. If I'm not loading, and if off is enabled, Okay, you probably don't need to have this. So I need to disable all these buttons. It's not. It showed actually now disable. Actually this one not, because the anonymously I don't need to have the email and the password, so it's just supposed to be when it's loading. Only when it's loading then I should disable this. Okay, now I have all these functions and my login screen, so I can put this together. In the content view, or from the app, you never talked about the realm access. But the reason I'm talking about this app here is because it has a current user and I can ask the configuration from this. So in the content view currently I'm just checking already the logic for my items and these groups. So it's a group loading view because I have here some loading states. So I'm going to create a new view in my items folder. Group loading view. And I'm just going to move everything there. And in order to do this, I also have to here import Swift. So now in the content view, we don't start with this. We start by deciding if you want to show the login view or the main content, this group view. And I need to check if I actually have a current user. So we are going to observe app Swift.app. So this helps me. I need to remove the preview for this. So the app, because it's observed, it will automatically give me the newest information of what the app is running. And the most important one is the user. You can check if the app has actually a current user. If I have a user, I can open the realm or a realm instance for this user. Because I'm using a server, this may take some time until it has loaded everything, and we can get information of the loading state or if it has actually access or if there's a problem with the connection. So we need to have in between view where we handle this loading of the realm. So I create here a new view, SwiftUI view. This is my realm opening view. So in my content view, I'm going to call this. And in order to open the right realm, you can pass this information in different ways. And the easiest is over the environment properties that are already provided. So in this case, it's the partition value. And we need to pass the user's ID. If you go to the backend to your Realm app under sync, we defined how we want to sync data, and we said we wanted to use, or the default, the template was partition based. And here we have this partition key, which is just underbar partition, and the rules of accessing. And in this case, we say this partition key, whatever this key here is, needs to be equivalent to the user's ID. And this is exactly what I'm also passing here. The partition value, whatever I said on the backend, needs to be user ID. So we are getting all of the data for this. Else, we are showing the login view. The nice thing is when I'm in the login view, I don't need to pass down the new user that I have something. This app automatically registers this. Okay, now I think it complains. I need to remove this because this was just for testing purposes. So I have here my content view, and this needs to know the app, and I just give it here this app. So let's try and run. Okay, let's go back to content view. In this state, and it knows that we don't have a current user. So now if I press here login anonymously, we at least have this loading state and hello world. This is actually because my current opening doesn't do much. So we know now we can continue on this part because it's working. There's Similar to the app user, if you have a user or not, we can also observe the state of the realm opening. And they have two property wrappers. One is async open. This is the app ID. This is the same as I had in here. We need to handle this a little bit more elegant in a later step. So this is the string partition value. This is the same as I just said here in the environment with the user ID. You can just give an empty string and it will use the value from the environment. So we have a little bit easier passing this. More configuration, this I don't need. And a timeout, which means that I think it's in milliseconds. If it doesn't work, we stop. Var async open. There's actually two different ways of opening a realm. So one is this async open and the other one is auto open. I'm just going to uncomment at least one of them. So the main difference is that do you want to be offline first? Meaning if you have a note-taking app where you definitely want to show the last data, so you want to always show data offline, also offline, like a note-taking app, then this is fine because it directly opens the app and then on the background fed it's fetching the data from the server to update this. In some cases, you really don't like to have stale data. You really want to see the newest, freshest, most amazing data. Like if you're having a food ordering app, some online shop where you always need newest data. But you're okay if it does not work offline. Because, I mean, if you're ordering something online, then yeah, this really doesn't make sense. Then you can use async open. So it is more a question of do you prioritizing downloading all the data. In our case, because it's more like a to-do app, and I'm quite fine I really like the offline thing, I probably go with the auto open. Okay, now let's look at what this is actually doing. So in the body, I'm checking the async open. Actually, this is called, I should rename this to auto open or to realm open, just to be more generic. And we look at the cases for this. So we have 5 different ones. Connecting is the first one. So we're just going to show here different progress views with texts. Connecting. Case dot waiting for user. Waiting for user. This is when you log in. The progress. You can also use the progress views. I think it has a progress. This is like the progress indicator. I'm just going to add here a lot of padding case. I mean, for us, it's not going to show a lot because I don't have a lot of data in the backend. Connecting, open, let realm. So this is the one I really want because this is the one where I get my realm and where I can finally show my group loading view. And because I have a realm and I said I can pass in here environment properties, I can say the realm that I have, I'm just going to pass down. So use all the views in the group loading view and its child views will use this realm, this database, which is configured for this one logged in user. Let arrow. This is just another text opening realm error. I mean, you would not show this error message to an actual user because they really don't care. Let's see if I have all of them. I think I need to delete the app again. I'm getting here a bad access point. I'm just going to delete the app. Okay, I try again with logging in anonymously. You saw some of the loading states. And I can now here add more elements. Actually, I also should add this logout button. So in my item list view, I have here one edit button. Okay, maybe I'm just going to place this also in the toolbar to make it more easy to understand, to read. Toolbar item, navigation bar leading. So somehow it took me quite a little bit of time to make this work because it kept on crashing. So if this is happening for you too, just delete the app in the simulator. Maybe also do a clean build folder, close Xcode, I don't know. So on the leading edge, I wanted to do the logout button. So this is log out. And the action was actually in my authentication manager. Okay, maybe I did not actually need to do this. Okay, I'm making this here a static function, so I can access it from anywhere. So going to back, I can say my auth manager log out. And then the toolbar item for trailing was this edit button. Okay. Now they're just nicer. Connecting. Okay, you saw a little bit of flash for the progress. But I have now again my data, and I can press here log out. I'm going to run a second simulator. So we actually have two different ones. I'm creating a dummy account. Okay, this is just... I said... I did add maybe too many rules. So I'm pressing here on sign up. You saw shortly the progress indicator. I'm going to add a couple of items already for this user. And I need to log in with the same one now on the other device so we can see. So this is logging in instead of sign up because it's already existing. And you see that again I have all the data. And if I add it on one of them or if I delete it on one of them, the other one is updated. So it seems to work, and we can now check on the Realm backend if I have the information that I wanted. When we run this app, a couple of things actually happened for us. And the first thing is, because I'm here in development mode, when I send my data from the local device, it's actually receiving this data and creates a schema from it automatically. So when I go here under schema, I have now a group. I'm just going to show this next to each other. Okay, maybe not enough space. So I had this group item actually had only two things, the ID and a link to my items. So you see here the schema it's written in, this is JSON, it's written differently, but the important thing is this schema has the name group or the title group. This is the one I just created. The required properties are the ID and partition. So this is the underbar partition that I set here with the sync. It's exactly the same. Okay, yeah, we saw this. This is this one. It sets it automatically for you, so you don't need to do anything. Always like automatic things happening. So this is a required field, but you don't need to handle anything. It's basically automatically setting it to the user ID. Then we have the ID, the partition. The ID is also managed by the system. It's creating here a unique identifier. And the interesting one is this items, which is an array pointing to other objects. Now we go to items. And I'm opening this. So here I had a little bit more. So again, I have the name of this model is item. The required fields is again ID and underbar partition. I also have here name and then is favored. You can also define them as optionals in your model, and then they would not be required here. So you see here what properties there are. There's strings and bool. So this is very nice because I didn't have to do much about this. We can also check the app user. And this is the one user. Okay, this is the two anonymous ones I just created. which you see here anonymously, and then this bob username and password. Then, in order to see the actual data that this one user created, we have to go to the database, and this is not in the realm, it's just decline the functions that run on top of the database. The database is in Atlas. So I go here under database, browse collection. And now you see here my database. This is the to-do database. Or you can create more databases. Then I can press here on group. And it has 2 groups. This is because I logged in anonymously and with Bob. And then I go to items. So now this has the data. I think it's always... So we have 13 of these elements. If I delete one of them in my client, to refresh the page. If I go to group, I see here is an array of these 3 objects. If I add here 1, 2, it's actually, okay, I needed to refresh this page, but now I have more here. Now I removed one of these elements, and the client has actually again 4. The one thing that that is a bit strange is that it did not delete the actual value. Maybe I'm going to, okay, this is getting a little bit, I need to make use of my space a little bit better. So I'm going to look for one of these elements. Here, this fluffy coaster. And now after refreshing and searching for this, it also updated. So it seems when I remove one of these, when I delete this here, it doesn't actually delete the document, the item, it just removes it from the groups list. So this is an important information which I did not know before. So this is this problem with this here. So I need to change this. Index path in offset. So now it basically removes from the list, but if you want to actually delete this, I need to do something extra. Net item is groups items flat index is equal of index is first. Then I can delete it from the list, and then I can start the delete. So again, I need to access the realm, or I can write the if let realm is the items realm. So then I can start a write transaction. Maybe they have something more convenient for this. Realm.write, realm.delete item. Well, we can try. Okay, I need to have my backend. I have 15 documents, and I delete now this fluffy one. Can't perform. Yes, it's it has too many rules. If let is item dot top. Need to refresh the page before we can check. Do I have 15 documents? I'm just checking what I'm going to delete. Operation monitor. So you can also search for something. So I'm looking for this item, which is my database. Now I delete it. And when I press apply, it doesn't find it anymore. So finally I did delete it. I can try this. So I have now 15 and I delete one. And I refresh my page. And it's 13. Actually, I can just press on this refresh. I add a couple, press refresh. Okay, now I have it increased again from 13 to 18 here. So you see it's quite convenient to use the backend, and you see what data is coming and was it changing. This was really a rough first start with Realm, MongoDB, because in the backend there's a lot more. So you can create here, use more authentication methods. You can take advantage more of these functions like the reset functions, or you can add functions that the client can call in case you have data access that you don't want to share everything. So you can also access this via these functions, or you write functions to clean up the database. For example, you can add also triggers. So you can schedule a function. Okay, here you see you can add this function that you wrote and say, okay, every day, one day in a week, on Sunday, I am doing this, I'm running this function. Or for example, you can send notifications to users, or you can clean up something. You can also use an authentication trigger. So here you give the name of the trigger and saying, okay, when the user is created, and maybe I want to create a database document for these users to store additional information about them. Or when the account is deleted, maybe I want to delete all the data that belongs to this user. You can also use HTTP endpoints if this is more interesting. Then there are some things you need to take into consideration for deployment. Here you can create more charts to check what is going on with the data. So just some visualization of what your user may be using or something. You can have multiple of these applications depending, maybe you want to test something, so you have a test one. You can also use this environment for this. I didn't really manage to get this together. But you see there is a lot more behind this backend. For now, I think we are quite okay with this. I hope you're now at a point where you can further investigate. If you want to see more of Realm, which I'm not really sure if that's going to happen, then please leave a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed it. Give this video a like. Until next time, happy coding.